And we are live, looks like. Hang on one second. Let me just refresh the thing. There we are. All right. Let's, there we go. Well, guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the second episode of Rock and Roll Religion. We're doing live, and we are actually going to be doing Saxon this time, like I keep promising. And with me to do that, we have two excellent gentlemen. First, you might have seen me with him on Monday, hailing all the way from the mythical land of Canada. We have Mr. That 70s Rock Fan. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great, my friend. How are you? I'm here behind the maple curtain in the Gulag Archipelago in Kazakhstan.
We're not that far from that, sadly. And
good to see you, mate.
And also joining us, we had him last week, and we had a good conversation. And we're looking to expand on that this time. Is Mr. 32 Flavors of Nickweiser. How you doing, buddy?
Oh man, I am excited to be here. I'm just, dude. Since I got to see that on the day of its release when it came out early February, and it's been a constant listener. And I'm just, and the fact that you and I have been talking for weeks about pushing it back, and like it's not like the conversation like died out and faded away, like you mentioned before you got on the stream. It's just like we're still excited to talk about. So it's like, so
like
the
more we had to push it back, the more amped I got. I'm like, we need to talk about this now.
Right. Keep them waiting. That's what I say. Build up the tension.
I feel like it worked.
It was my fault. My apologies. I had to drop out last week, but it's fine. We're here now.
No worries, man.
We're gonna do it.
It's we always make it work somehow, whether we want to or not. But no, we let's see who we got in the chat here. We got Xenomorph with us, and yes, my beard game is quite legendary.
Sub Xenomorph, how you doing, dude? Nice meeting you earlier on the Culture Casino member stream, man. Great. That was awesome. Seriously, I know Culture, like what he was saying earlier on the member stream when he was talking about meeting people, but I got to reiterate what he said, because back in Vegas in August, meeting everyone and putting faces to the names you'd see on the chat was a very surreal thing, and I love meeting the faces. I'm a big fan of meeting the people, and obviously I can't wait to meet you guys, especially for the next meet. So the next meetup in October is gonna be legendary.
I'm definitely gonna try to make it. Like I've done both of them. Like we've had a couple of mini meetups in Boston, and we had a big one in Natick, and those are both awesome.
Nice.
So,
it's great to meet people. I met a few people in Austin when I was down in Texas a month or two ago.
Who'd you meet?
Matt Fullball,
nice.
Red Shirt, just another Red Shirt, and he's Mrs. Red Shirt. Jake D, Daniela Lafave, Salty Texas C.
Whoa.
If I'm missing anybody, they'll kill me later. But for Matt Fullball, it was good. It's good to meet him. Yeah,
I mean that's something I'm really weak on, because it's just like I'm terrible with names. And there was like 150 people at the meetup in Natick. I know I met Dr. Rachel there. I know I met Thomas.
Gilkey?
Yep, Gilkman.
Yeah, the Gilkman.
Well, he's good.
And then obviously Ryan was there, Jay was there, Jeremy was there. Which the funny part was I was actually surprised how short Ryan is.
Everybody is short on YouTube, apart from you, probably. Apart from you,
right?
The rest of us are short. We just look the same height because of the cameras.
Everyone probably thinks I'm a dwarf because of the beard, and then finds out I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we got a lot to talk about. So without further ado, let us get into this absolute beast of a record, which is Carpe Diem by Saxon. I cannot say enough good things about this band or this record. It's just what an absolutely fantastic release.
Yeah.
I agree. Go ahead, 70s.
No, I was going to say, first of all, I love the art work. I mean, it's just awesome. There they are looking out at my ancestors somewhere going, hope those blue face painted bastards don't appear today. You know?
It's like Nope. They stay over there.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it weird that we're here today talking about a band that's been going for well over 50 years, and yet they still rock hard and still make original albums. So
That's
many
even
bands,
more impressive.
So many old bands just coast on the old stuff. These guys have never done that.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned things. I want to piggyback off that a little, because here's the thing: they're at a point in their career where, you know, if they're still making originals, but it wasn't as up to par with the so-called classic material, I can understand, because they're coming up with this many good songs after so long. I can only imagine it gets tough. The standard gets high. The fans, their expectations get that much higher. But the fact that they're still putting out stuff that people could still enjoy, and it's not like they're just playing one song off the album and then never playing it, you know, for following tours. Like, they're playing new songs and old songs live. And when, you know, the next tour comes up, they play a good chunk of, you know, later day, aka modern Saxon, along with the classic era as well. And that's incredible, especially with 23 studio albums. That is, if you don't count, you know, like live stuff, cover albums. This is the 23rd album. Like, I'm trying to think, Motorhead has had probably around the album. Overkill's around 19 or 20. And
Priest is at 18.
Priest is at 18. And it's like, it's when you think about that, that is just crazy. 23 albums. Like, and how do you still get inspired? Like, that's what I'm always like, how do you like you must really love what you do to still find inspiration. And they've had the same lab that on the song, they've had it for at least like 20 years now. So like,
yeah, right. That's longer than many bands' entire existence. And it's, yeah. But yeah, the 50 plus years thing, oh God, it makes me feel old. That's what you're doing this show for, to make me feel old. But I love that they said, you know, Biff said, I want to tour on these albums. I don't want to rest on my laurels. And it's not like they're making substandard material. This is blowing me away, this album, the quality of the writing and the songs, the strength of the songs. I want to see these live. And I typically want to see the new material anyway. You know, I don't want to just see a retread of songs we've heard 500 times, which is what you get with a lot of bands now of that era, or bands of that age. Like the Stones, I mean, you know, whatever, bands that are
David doing the same stuff for longer than I've been alive at this point.
Whereas Saxon are doing something new, and so, to be fair, our Priest and other bands of my era, traditional metal, as you've called them, Nick. I'm a trad metal guy.
No, that's a good thing to be proud of, man. Trad metal, like there's no issue there.
These guys do not fuck around.
No, they don't.
Just still kill it after 50 years.
Yeah, and I particularly love Saxon. I mean, it's the same with Priest and Sabbath and others. These are working class guys from the rough working class areas of the UK, and I think that's always informed that sound, that British trad metal sound. You know, Saxon are from Barnsley in Yorkshire. It's not exactly, you know, Sunset Boulevard or the Strip. It's not the Strip, you know.
Well, I know Glenn from Priest and probably Biff from Saxon have said it. You know, they grew up in Birmingham, so they grew up with that pounding of the steam hammers and all that kind of stuff from all the metal foundries. And I think most of them even worked at British Steel before they started the records.
Well, absolutely, and I think you can hear it in their sound. You can hear Saxon's roots, and you know the song, the subject material. I love. They could have written this album for me. It's got Industrial Revolution, Roman history, space, and astronomy, and they writing it for me.
Right, I find the same thing with a lot of both their material and some other bands too. It's just like, were you guys like intentionally writing an album I would listen to, or or are we just all nerds that love the same shit?
Either way, it works.
But like when you come up with 23 albums, speaking of seeing it live, how do you even come up with a set list for this kind of stuff?
Oh my God!
Like, how do you even decide?
It has to be hell to come up with a set list, because when I saw them on that one, you know, when I told you on last week's episode when they were on the tour for Priest for Firepower, and Saxon were touring off of the Thunderbolt album, and I remember they did around 22 or 23 songs, and they did like 3 or 4 songs off the Thunderbolt album, because that was the new album at that time. And I thought that was really cool that they were actually representing that album. But yeah, I just hearing all these songs, like I can imagine, like, because you got to play some hits, but you also want to represent the new album. But then it's like, then there's always there's always gonna be those small percentages of fans that they try to play with the deep cut or two, and just like, man, where do you start with the deep cuts? And there's many of them. There's so many of them. Like many great bands.
Like with a band like this, you just can't even start with like the deep cuts, or you'll be on there for 5 hours.
Yeah, I mean, imagine these band meetings when they're planning the tour must be pretty interesting, like just kicking that around, because you're talking 23 studio albums, some of which are extremely lengthy songs on them. So that's how many, I don't know, 230, 250 songs.
Oh my, I think that's 25 songs.
I mean, you can give 22 plus 3 encores. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because you're going to save the hits for the encore, so that's fine. That kind of pushes 3 tracks to there. But yeah,
obviously there's some stuff you have to play. Like you're going to play Princess of the Night. You're going to play freaking Wheels of Steel. It's going to like Denim and Leather probably. You're going to
I would always want Machine Gun. That's one I always
Machine Gun's one I would always like to see. So, but that's 4 songs right there, and that's only off of 2 albums.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is great. It's great that this album, I've really listened to it heavily since you suggested doing this show, and what impresses me is that these guys are okay. They're in their 70s, probably. They sound so fresh, and just sound so up for it.
I was noticing that when I first started listening to the record, is how good Biff still sounds after all of these years.
Oh, Biff, dude. Between him, like, it's just like, how does it, like, once again, another thing where if his voice aged out, I would understand, because it's not like he hasn't lived a long life, but yet somehow he still sounds amazing. And him and Paul have been there since day one, since 1977. And their newest guy was from 96, which is Doug, of course. Like, dude, I'm just like, these guys are still hungry, like, and
both of them absolutely slayed on this record too. Paul and Doug were both fantastic.
I'm supremely impressed with Biff's vocals on this, and I love the fact that the production that they use, whilst it's modern, it's very crisp. It doesn't overwhelm the vocal ever. They don't ever go too fast. It's not that they're a slow band. They're not thrash or speed particularly.
I mean, there's some actual speed metal tracks on this album.
There's a couple there, but never enough to overwhelm the lyric.
Nova.
Oh, hell, dude, that is an atomic goddamn bomb of a song.
Yeah, and I love the subject matter. It's
yeah.
But yeah, it's tight. It's tight but loose, that track. Particularly, that phrase, tight but loose. It's absolutely rock solid tight, and yet it doesn't sound like it's rigid and we're everyone's got to stick exactly to that time. The playing is pretty fluid within that, and the soloing in particular, and the signature, they've got a lot of signature time breaks. They change the time break in the songs. There's a lot of that. And
one thing they do on this album a lot that I've always liked when bands do is, and the intro to the song, they'll be on like a silent count for the first refrain. So that you won't hear the drums, so you don't know what actual tempo they're using and what time signature they're going with. So when it hits, you're like, oh, okay, that's where they're going with. Cool.
Just on that track in particular, and I know we're out of order with the tracks, so it doesn't matter. One thing I'm never great at is identifying who's exactly playing the solos on albums. I mean, a lot of people go, oh yeah, that's so and so.
Headphones. Listen to headphones, and the solos are always separated by guitar players on when they're left or right on stage.
Trying to identify who was playing the main solo on Supernova, whether it was Quinn or Scara. It's very fluid. It's a beautiful solo.
And a lot of bands from this era, Priest started this, but Saxon's famous for it too, of just one guitarist starting the solo and the other one just blending right in.
Yeah.
And just coming right over him and just blending it right in, and it works.
There's no
great.
lead or rhythm guitar. It's 2 guitarists. I mean, it's actually an old Thin Lizzy were great at that too, and Wishbone Ash, not a band I particularly like, but they love that twin guitar thing. So you never know exactly who's going to take it. But I think on that one, I was really trying to pin down who was.
I'm pretty sure it's Paul Quinn, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I assumed it was, but I wasn't sure. But it's a great solo on that one. Absolutely, it's fluid, Very full, very melodic. They have the power, they have the speed, but they've also got the melody always.
And the perfect example for this has to be The Pilgrimage, one of my favorite songs on this fucking record.
Dude,
just that absolutely just epic, slow-paced, very methodic or melodic intro. Just, oh man, that song's fantastic.
All right, I gotta mention something because I'm buddying between you two. Yeah. That song is the best song that was not released in a Rocky movie soundtrack. Seriously, just because it just feels so like motivating and like you feel like you just want to go like do some training. It's a montage song for me.
Eye of the Tiger montage. Yes. Yeah. But that's good. I could see that being a staple live for a number of years. I could hope so. Maybe right in the middle of the set. Right
even if it's not on the record, I could easily see them using that as a walkout track. Like if it's not in the set, like I could easily see like the intro to that, like when they're bringing the lights up, they'll play that on. I could easily see that, either that or the drums from the intro.
It's a slow burner. I love those kind of tracks. Because not everything has to be super fast. Slow burner. I love the fact that during the middle of it, the bass suddenly just kind of pops out.
And the bass work on this is fantastic as well. Like they don't turn him down. Like he's at the perfect volume. He's just playing his thing, and it
rumbles.
You can actually hear him. Who the funk?
Yeah, right. They didn't turn the bass all the way down
for it too. You don't have to dig deep for it. It's right there, and it's just like, there it is. It's just there. Because most metal records, even good bands. One of the historical weaknesses, especially within thrash and death metal, is the lack of the bass tone, and even to a degree black metal as well. So the fact that Saxon has it so well heard with Nibs, it's just man,
you made a good point there. Yeah, Nick, you're making a great point because I think what is sometimes lost in the thrashier metal stuff for me, which is why I'm more of a trad guy, is that starts to then become basically they're just strumming the bass. You're getting a lot of chords, a lot of single notes. That's not what a bass guitarist does. And there's a lot of bass guitar on this album. He's really playing that thing. You hear the individual notes. And I just love that. I love that. It's got a great bottom on it.
And that's part of the production quality too on this record is you can hear every note from everybody from even probably some of the ghost notes on the drums that he didn't really want you to hear. They're all in there.
Yeah, I like the. Have you watched the video for it as well? I really like the video.
Yes, I watched the making of.
Oh, the making of was a great little thing. But the shot at the end of them in Glastonbury tour, which I've stood up there a few times. It's really neat. It's very evocative. It's a great place to stand and look out over that great West Country.
Well, I mean, that was a watchtower, I believe, for that entire area.
It's just got such a great feel that it's a perfect place to do that shot. It's a very spiritual place. Whether you don't even have to, it doesn't have to be religious. In fact, I like the way the lyric kind of left it open there. Yes, it's had sort of an iconography of crusading type nights, although it's not about crusades. But it just had that great, we are traveling somewhere to do something that's meaningful.
Yeah. And I love like that the back panel of this record too, where it's just they have the track list, but then it's just what you see north of the wall. And it's just gorgeous open country.
Yeah, having been there, it is quite windswept and interesting there. You noticed they had to build a wall to keep the Scots out. Well, they were the Picts at the time. The Scots came over from Ireland in AD 500, but the Picts who were lost in the mists of time there. The only people to beat an entire Roman legion that disappeared completely.
Yeah, anyway, nobody even knows what happened to it. Like it just disappears from history once it gets north of Hadrian's Wall.
Mons Grappius was the battle, but nobody knows what happened. But yeah, it's great. I love that cover art. It's fantastic.
And the number of sonic styles they do on this one record and make it all work as one seamless piece is just beautiful. I mean, you have Carpe Diem, which is more like historical, there's more an epic trad heavy metal.
I love the lyrics in that song. Just butting in saying that.
just the lyricism in general on all of this is fantastic. But then you have Age of Steam with that industrial freaking pounding that just the feel of these songs is just pitch perfect for every single one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then back to the lyrical content again. As you're saying, it's these are songs that are not about boy meets girl under the light of the silvery moon, which then explodes for no apparent reason. This is
I've listened to that track though.
I know this is not. The subject matter for the songs is it's fantastic. I mean, they're not writing songs about boy meets girl or let's go fuck or whatever. You know, this is difficult stuff to write about, but they do it in such a stylish way, you know?
No, absolutely. I mean,
Industrial Revolution. I mean, who makes songs about that, really? I mean,
well, I mean, it's a perfect setting for a metal band. It's dark, it's grim.
Yes.
The word epic, it's tossed around a lot these days, but if I had to write about what the stories that they are telling within these songs, lyrically speaking, I would say they actually are epic, because when you hear lyrics like here comes the revolution, here comes the age of steam, stoke the fires to superheat, work the mind, the coal is deep. I'm like, dude, brilliant. That sounds like it sounds like it sounds like they're talking about a very medieval time, and it's just like, oh my god, you just see that. When they write their stuff too, I can start to form a picture in my head, a visual of what they're singing about, which is cool as well. So if you're sitting back, you got the record playing on the vinyl, and you look at the lyric sheet, and as Biffy's spitting out those lyrics, you start to imagine the story that it's taking you to, and I love that. Once again,
you listen to those lyrics, that imagery in the vocals, with that pounding riff in the background, just driving it home is just perfect.
Pounding, yeah. There's always these pounding riffs, but they're also clear as a bell. I mean, you can hear the runs, you can hear the riffs. I do like that. It's a very Saxon thing. They're really good at that. They're possibly the best band in the world at this style, which is, I would call, again, trad metal. As you
I wouldn't deny them. They're absolutely fantastic at this.
And I think they've really come into their own in the last few years in that, they're
kind of the more power and speed metal side of trad heavy, but it's fantastic.
Yeah. It is. It never overwhelms the singing though, which is great. This is the one thing that never overshadows those vocals. You can hear every word. And it's piercing and clear, razor sharp.
Yeah, and that's something that other bands that are from their era could learn. Looking at you, Iron Maiden.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're, much as I love Maiden, I think Saxon are possibly the better band.
These days, I would say that's not even debatable, and Saxon absolutely blow them out of the water, because Maiden hasn't come out with anything that's anywhere close to this or Firepower's quality since 2000.
No, I think you're right there. Yeah, again, that's an older band, but living on their past laurels to a certain extent.
Obviously, well, I think it's more that they just got really self-indulgent and really experimental later on, like this new record. First of all, the production, I don't know what they were thinking.
They don't master a lot of the newer albums. Like, that's the thing. They've made a point to not master the albums. I get it. No, I get what they're going for there. It's fine. I have no issue there. My issue is that a lot of the songs you don't remember. And people can say, oh, but the expectations are so much. Dude, the expectations are equally as high for Judas Priest, and yet they're still bringing it. And then, of course, you got a lot of their lesser-known peers. Oh, let's not forget when Black Sabbath reunited under the Dio moniker. And yes, we're not calling them Heaven Hell. We're calling them Black Sabbath. When they put out their last album with Dio back in 2008. And that was a great album too. So it's not like you can't say the expectations too high, because Judas Priest also put out Firepower as well a few years ago, and these albums are well received by fans. And
or even speaking of Sabbath, the original lineup getting together for 13, which is still a fantastic record.
People were into 13 too. Once again, you're proving the point no further. Like, it's not like what drives me crazy, it's when you listen, you can tell they still have it in them. Like, it's not like they're like, it's not like where they're putting out, and this is gonna be a very cliche reference, but it's relevant. But it's kind of like later Metallica, where you wonder if they're even capable. I truly feel like Maiden are capable. You see them on stage, they still kill it live. A, B, they sound like they're very active performers, and there are bits of good songs within some of the overly long songs, or then they'll pull out the one short song on an album, and it'll be good. It won't be good just because it's a short song, but there will be actually something good. And to remember, I'm like, dude, I feel like they still have it in them. I truly believe they do. It's whether they choose to commit.
Well, I think you mentioned, didn't you, Nick, that self-indulgence is an issue, perhaps. Maybe they believe their own mythos. I don't know, but to me, Saxon are a way better band at the moment and have been for a number of years, and because they've continued to put out good new material. And this is 23 albums in. This stands alongside their best. It could even be their best. It's given time to.
I mean, time's the ultimate decider on those.
But I'm off the top of my head. I'm having a hard time coming up with an album that's objectively better than this one.
Yeah, it's sophisticated without losing power, which is a very tricky, it's a razor's edge thing to walk along. You can either go for power and bludgeon or sophisticated. To do both is power and sophistication.
And I think that they developed that along the way. They didn't start out that sophisticated. Musically, kind of, but lyrically, they enhanced a lot over the decades. And this is the end result of them just constantly improving.
I think the lyrical sophistication was always something they aimed for, and Biff aimed for, because when you look back at some of their earlier albums, there's not many songs like 747, Strangers in the Night, and the Metal Cannon, even at the time. They were attempting to do things that were a little bit different lyrically, I think, and but they also had that musicality edge to go with the power. Again, some bands can do one, some bands can do the other. Walking that line is tough, and you see a lot of that in here, like the Pilgrimage is got a fantastic mix of musicality and power.
And one thing too that Saxon's always done really well is go with riffs that are fairly simple to play, but sound fantastic.
Well, less is more in that case, because it's easy to play when you mention simplicity, but when it's effective and it sticks in your head, it provides a memorable riff or a memorable chorus. That to me is more effective, because you can be the most talented musician in the world, but just because you're the most talented musician doesn't automatically equate to being the most talented songwriter. Because I've seen people who can play circles around a lot of the trad metal musicians, but when you put on one of their quote unquote songs, there's nothing there that you remember that sticks with you. Like I've seen amazing drummers who could, do crazy, like, the fastest drummer alive type of shit. But when it comes to holding a steady beat, they look helpless. And that's really ironic, because you wouldn't think that because they're so fast. But then when you see them trying to hold a steady AC/DC accept style beat, they're like, whoa, I'm not used to this. Like it's like they're on their own ADD of sorts. So
well, they're not giving the other musicians space to do their thing either. And I think it's not an arms race. Some bands treat it as an arms race,
like a sport. It's almost like a sport for some of them. Yeah, it's so technical that there's not a hook there.
Well, I was listening to the grown-ups, and they've entered the room. So.
Oh yeah, I was listening to the Metal Roundtable the other day, and one guy put it very well. It's like, you'll remember a ton of Anthrax riffs because they're fairly simple, and they're really catchy. No one will ever remember anything Yngwie Malmsteen does because it's fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but it's complicated as shit.
If you're talking solo material, yes. Now, if you're talking the stuff he did in Alcatraz,
that's a fair point.
Alcatraz stuff is very exceptional, because
I guess
it also helps. Better, but that's also probably why he left Alcatraz, because he wanted to do more of what he wanted to do, because he was kind of a guy. He's just one guy, and as a member of a band where he has to be a team player with his solo project, he can do what he wants. Because let's not also forget that Super Shredder Steve Vai replaced Malmsteen and Alcatraz as well, and Vai is no slouch either. Like
he's just as good.
And Vai actually liked being in a band where he just had to be a team player. Granted, Vai's out in the world doing his own thing right now and has been for a while, but he likes being the guy where he's just like, no, I like being a guy where I don't call shots.
I think he serves songs very well, though. He likes to play songs and play his part in songs. Some guys are more, I want to do my own thing, and it's all about that. I think what I like is songs. So I like an album like this that's full of distinct, strong songs. I've got loads of other long, doodly stuff too, but this is what grabs me. Powerful song like that.
Oh, and I love tracks like this too, because especially with a simplified riff like that, when I hear an album like this, I'll go grab my six string and just try to play it.
Yeah,
because I just love trying. Like, even if I suck at it or whatever, I just like trying it. And I'll get it eventually.
There's a lot of playable stuff on here, though. I don't know what stuff have you been particularly...
I've got the main riff of the Pilgrimage down. Just because that's just fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Is that like in a minor key? Is that very minor key stuff, or how are they playing that? I'm not very expert on this.
It's mostly just power chords and stuff like that. It's just very it's hard. I'm not good enough to describe it. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I just know how to do it. I'm not a professionally trained musician at all. I do this and it makes that noise.
I think that one sounds to me it's like written in a very minor key, which is great because that doom laden sound that you can tell it's not a happy up thing, but it's neither is it miserable. It's just got that.
It's just very toned down and very laid back in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And I just wanted to mention in the chat, Dragon Master 360 mentioning instrumental music and medieval themed music. I'm assuming, Dragon Master, you're a big fan of Blackmore's Night then, or something like that. So, which I am too. I love Blackmore's Night.
Richie Blackmore's a fantastic guitar player.
Yeah, I love all the medieval stuff he does. It's great. But anyway, sorry, sidetrack. I just wanted to mention that in the chat.
No, that was a good mention. I'm sure Pope agrees.
Oh, absolutely. And Nick, I know you got to go pretty soon here.
But, I was gonna say I got like 10 minutes. So I was gonna say before we do, we should talk about Dam Busters and remember the
my favorite track.
Absolutely,
so,
Dam Busters is my favorite track.
Dam Busters, dude. That song felt like they like seriously they must like slammed a bunch of Red Bulls. Like we're gonna do this. We're gonna be Saxon on speed with this one, and they took their Saxon sound and amplified it on roids, and boy, I feel the rush when that one hits. I really do.
Cool.
I really do. I really.
You hear the new wave of British heavy metal thing in there. You can hear the origins of bands like Saxon, and particularly their own origins in that track. Mm-hmm. It's very, I hate that acronym because you can't just throw it out. It's very in the bum. It's got the speed, but I love the subject matter again. The Dam Busters. I don't know if you guys know about that raid, but the very daring raid with they destroyed the German dam.
That was in what, Norway?
No, this one was in Germany. The Dam Busters
right,
one. Yeah, I can't remember the name of the lake. Iser or something. Anyway, that very daring raid. I love that subject matter. They could have written it for me.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, they've captured that kind of, I guess, fast plane, flying in low, whatever.
And that's the kind of tradition that Saxon's done before, and bands like Sabaton basically founded themselves on.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly.
Squadron of the Brave. Oh my God!
Right. It's possibly my favorite track. I'd have to say, possibly, because it's. Changes these things change.
It's shifted because you'll have that, then you'll have the montage ballad with the pilgrimage, and you'll have like killer second last track with Black as the Night.
Yeah, that's another.
And then of course, what a hell of a close with Living on the Limit. But obviously before I go, I know, right? And that stuff's just it
sharp but warm is the term I use for the guitar. Sharp but warm.
Yeah.
No, but I really do. Once again, Dam Busters, like as you read the story going on, and you got your wax, vinyl in hand, and you're reading the lyrics from the sheet. And once again, another story. It feels like they write like short stories. Each song is its own story, and you got to read it as its own unique little story. And obviously, they're also like each album's like a book, and each song is a chapter per se. That's what I'm trying to allude to. Yes, each song lyrically is like a chapter, and that's, remember when I was first reading lyrics, I'm like, wow, they're really talking about some intense history here with bombings and all that stuff. So, and obviously the lyrics really fit the speedness of the song too. So it was very fitting that they went for a more intense subject matter for a more intense song on the album, because then you get a song like Remember the Fallen, which is obviously about those who fell due to the coronavirus. We're not doctors, by the way, YouTube, so don't be batshit retarded. We're talking about just a fact of life.
I'm not a virologist or whatever they call it.
We're just talking about what the song is literally about.
I'm not a gynecologist, but I'll take a look.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And Remember the Fallen, once again, another power ballad on here. They just killed the power ballads too. Like,
I wanted to. You touched on something I'd written here in my notes because I have to have notes.
Do it. No,
but you sang, the line from the Ambassadors, the chorus line.
Mm-hmm.
I've got written here. I can hear a couple of thousand people singing that line.
Oh God, yes.
I could hear it in my head. A couple of thousand people singing along there.
I could hear this one being sung a lot. The fact that the first, I kind of chuckled though the first time I ever looked at the lyrics this one, because the first lyric it says it came across the China Sea, and I heard that it came across the China Sea.
Oh, that's fucking great.
But anyways, back to more serious talks on the music.
But and I love that they cover different topics too. Like it's not they don't just stick with one theme. Like it's a bunch of like short, like you say, like short stories that all get kind of put into a little 10 or 12 chapter compilation. Like Lady in Grey is a lot more supernatural and a lot more stuff like that. Where I dig all of it.
Yeah, I call it a heavy super ballad. Yeah, which is my useless term for things like that. Heavy super ballad.
Well, I mean, it fits in like the more and more like demarcated genres that we get into, like like technical death metal and all this. It's like, okay, now we're getting a little.
We do like to categorize things, don't we?
And and then on the very next track, you have like All for One, which is written about the Three Musketeers. So freaking,
it's great subject matter again. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's all fantastic subject matter, and it's all stuff I would just sit and listen to him talk about it.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned Lady in Grey, and I think that's for me one where you can hear a slight influence of Andy Sneap as producer.
You can hear Sabbath.
You hear a touch of Priest in there occasionally.
Yep.
You hear that influence. Not saying it's in any way a copy but you can hear his influence.
Well, I think he's the producer on this record.
He's the producer, yeah.
And he produced the last two Saxon albums. He produced Firepower by Priest, and I think he's done the last 3 Accept records too.
Yeah.
He has. He's done a lot of the last several Accepts. He's definitely done, obviously, Priest. So I didn't know he was involved with this one. He just needs to freaking get Sabbath back together and have them be the opener on a Priest tour. Throw a third band. He can have them as the in-between band. That way Andy Sneap can get his break. His rest break. Yeah, right?
Sneap needs he's done a great job on here. And I particularly hear him on that Lady in Grey. I can hear that influence.
Yeah, I know the song you're talking about on the guitar, especially that perfect tone.
Yes,
that he's famous for. And yeah, I can definitely hear the influence of him on this record. And that's one thing I have to say is the guitar tone on all of these records has been absolutely titanic.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's like crisp, but it's like a dagger.
Yep.
Bite like a crocodile. I don't know how. I'm not good at expressing things technically, but
it's a two band.
It's co-produced between Biff and Andy. So you were right. So Andy and Biff. So obviously I'd imagine with Biff and what's his face being in the band so long, Paul, they're gonna be like, they want to have definitely more say since they know their sound. So
I think it's good to have an outside guy as well.
Oh, it is.
We know
tunnel vision's real.
Yeah, we know Biff could produce it in his sleep, but I think it's nice to have that viewpoint, especially it's a guy that's working with other bands as well, as you pointed out. So it just brings in that little bit something that makes
and it gives you that outside perspective too. Of when you get a little too far down in the weeds or too far down your own little thought process of, I love this and I want to keep doing that. And you need someone else from outside the band to go, I'm not sure it belongs on the record. Or I think we need to throttle back.
Yeah, one good thing about this record is, as they said in the making of, they had a lot of time to kind of polish it, because of the lockdowns and they weren't playing live, and they said, well, okay, we can, and they went off. Biff went off and did other things, did solo stuff, and
I think
they got a cover album and a solo album,
but they
got to do this.
Yeah, they gave him time to just kind of polish out the rough edges in the lyrics, and
I think they recorded this prior to the lockdown, so this was all done before, and Andy just had time to work on it and process it, and make sure everything was perfect before they got out.
Yeah, they didn't want to release it because it might get lost without a tour. They like to tour the albums, so They held
Which
it back
is logical. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's a very fair thing to do. Yeah, I get it too there because there was mixed opinions on because there were albums that came out still, but despite all in 2020, 2021, and bands were conflicted. They want to push them back, release and some. There was a good argument of, hey, we want to tour on it, but then there's a whole, hey, no one else has anything going on. Now's the time to listen to it without distraction. So it's hard to say which one was better. I don't feel like either or is bad. I guess that's a case of do what you feel is best for the situation. It's very tough. It's a very tough thing to because it's a complicated argument. But I'm overall looking back in the retrospect sense, I do feel like Saxon made a good move releasing it in February of 2022. I'm fucking up my English.
You've invented
here.
a new month, February.
Yeah.
You never guessed that English is all three of our native languages, but
that's right. You wouldn't. It's separated by a common language, as they used to say.
All right, but lastly, once again, Remember the Fallen, another great power ballad here with a more emotional, lyrical concept going on about what happened, and it tells the story of the situation very, very well. So, and that's obviously this will be at the part where I have to make the piece. So you guys are going to have to talk about Supernova through Living on the Limit. But I'm glad I got to stuck around here a little longer than I planned. But guys, this is awesome.
No, lock the doors. You're not leaving. Lock the doors.
And overall, Nick, what would you give the album? Out of 10.
9.2 or 3-ish. Sorry. No, that's intentionally messing up my English.
So you guys will hear ours later, but that's right in the same range. This is a fantastic record.
Yeah, how many handy randies though?
This gets a reach around of handy randy. This one gets a reach on. This is my biggest way of judging. Right, and once again, we're speaking now in a retrospect type of sense. I'm glad we're speaking on this album now. I mean, yeah, you could say now there's not the hype that comes to right around the release time, but because you take away that hype, you can see things a bit more objectively speaking. You can take out the fanboy goggles and you say, hey, am I still listening to this album? Am I still coming back to it? Because re-listens are very important and a crucial testament to how strong a record is. You can just say it's good and then not listen to it again. And then it's like, oh, well, was it really that good if you're not going back to it? I mean, granted, I get life happens or exceptions, but mostly speaking, if you truly are invested in something, you'll want to come back to it again and again. And this album has been something I've come back to. And that's saying a lot because there's still records that came out last year that I'm listening to. So Saxon has, at one point in time, for like 3 weeks straight, it was the only album I was listening to. But now it's been in the mix with a few other albums I've been listening to, and it's somehow held up firmly in the mix, so it's not lost its place.
That's good, yeah. See, I wouldn't like to claim I was jaded, but it takes a lot for an album to really grab me now and go back to it, as you say, and this one's one of those. Every year or two, there's something that makes me want to go back, and this one's been one of them. It's been like 4 weeks of constant play,
See, and that once again, it shows you're able, and you already came from what sounds like a more objective personality about it too, because even though you grew up as a fan from I guess you could say the golden age.
Saw them in the old days.
Yeah, you could say you literally saw them back in the day.
I did.
So I feel like that's a very commendable thing that if
never
you
thought
really
we'd be
like
here
it,
now.
After 2022, talking about the new Saxon.
That's the space age future, 2022. I never imagined Saxon would still be going. Never mind, I'd still be talking about stuff.
And we got them killing it, but we also now have this incoming wave of other bands as well that's coming out that are inspired by this original shred metal sound. Yeah. We got this one I mentioned. There's Ambush. There's Fortress. There's all these killer young traditional metal bands. Night Demon, Haunt. There's so many killer traditional trad metal influence bands coming around. So we got now a new generation coming around to embrace this sound. And it's a good time to be alive when you see people are like, hey, we want to do what these originals were doing. And it's like, okay, cool. I'm all in. But it looks like the Pope is back. So
All hail the Pope.
Oh, hold on.
Here come the Pope.
We see you, but we can't hear you. We see you.
Well, that's a relief.
My actual mic was muted.
All right.
I'm just dumb on that one. But yeah, I had a minor technical issue there. So
it's all good. This is going to be the part, though, where I say goodbye. So, Pope, it was fun. 70s, it was good. You guys fill out nicely the rest of the album. And yes, 70s, it has been great. Guys,
it's always good, buddy. Yeah.
Always.
We will absolutely do more of these in the future. Nick, thank you for showing up, man.
The pleasure is mine. Thanks, guys.
Hope the kids are okay.
Oh,
he needs 4 subs to get to 900, so go get that done.
I know.
Oh,
I've subbed 18 times already.
YouTube violated me. I was at nearly 910, and they they brought me down to 894. And then either they put 2 back, or somehow 2 people sub since, because it's now at 896. So they are violating me.
I can't create any more.
Now you get to do it twice.
Yeah, I can't create any more extra accounts, mate.
It's
I've done
okay.
About 20 already.
Don't worry about it. All right, guys. Thanks.
See ya.
Pope, 70s, chat. Bye, guys.
Have a good one, man.
He's a good lad, isn't he?
Oh yeah, man.
It's taught me a lot, because I'm well out of touch with a lot of modern metal, and Nick's turned me on to quite a few bands.
Oh man, like I'm huge into that scene too. Like that, he turned me on to Fortress. I actually did a review on him because he shared the album with me. I was just like, these guys are fantastic.
Yeah, I've started listening to that. Yeah, I mean, it's actually spurred me recently into getting into, especially doing the radio show thing that you very kindly listened in on last night. It spurred me into getting into listening to stuff more again. You know, I was kind of going down other rabbit holes in the last few years. A lot of gaming, a lot of other types of stuff, and getting back into just purely listening to music for its own sake.
Yeah, I think that's something I've gotten back into in the last couple of years, probably last 5-6 years as well, is just sitting and listening to music rather than doing it while I'm doing something else or while I'm playing a game or whatever, because I actually want to pay attention to these albums now. Whereas like even the stuff I grew up with, like a lot of the 90s rock and heavy metal, it's just background noise for a lot of stuff while I'm
stick it on and we do something else. Yeah, and we're all guilty of that. And just like things like reviewing this album allowed me to just sit down with a pen and paper and just listen.
And that is one of the most awesome things about doing this channel and doing these reviews and stuff like that is I have to sit down and just listen to it with a pen and paper in my hand and actually write down what I think and feel about the record and actually pay attention to all this stuff.
Yeah, it's good, and that's why I've enjoyed doing the radio stuff, because I actually get to sift through my huge digital collection of shite and good stuff, and actually go, you know what? I want to put that in that playlist.
That reminds me, I need to re-download like half my library off of iTunes again.
I keep losing it. I've lost it so many times.
Especially when you have a gaming computer and you don't get any warning that it's not going to work the next time you turn it on.
That's right. Yeah,
it's like, oh yeah, you know those 4,000 songs you had on me.
Yeah, I've got backup after backup because I've lost my collection so many times. And actually, I had about 19 or 20,000, and it's down to about 12,000 now because I've lost so much.
I had so much stuff that I had, I shouldn't admit this on TV, but that I had from like the Napster and LimeWire era that I had when I was like 10, and I couldn't afford records, and I've lost all of it.
Yeah, we were talking about this before we started, which is that if you've bought an album 4 times, I actually don't mind finding a digital copy of it if I've already paid for it 4 times, which over 60 years I have,
Oh yeah.
Not newer stuff, that's different, but then also the try it before you buy it idea, which is well, do I really want to spend $30 on a vinyl album or even $15 on a digital download of something that I haven't heard yet that I might not like?
Yeah, so. I mean, and that's something that I think channels like mine and yours and Nick's can do is be like, hey, we've listened to this record. We love it. Yep. And kind of get that bit of confidence before you go into a record blind or an artist blind.
Yeah. And we're capturing that nerd corner of the fellowship, music nerd corner of the fellowship, which isn't as big as, everyone's talking about comics or blah, blah, blah. No, I don't care about that. I want to talk about this. So.
I mean, and stuff I'm into as well. Like I've always been a comic, like superhero comic guy and stuff like that. But this is what I really care about. And like this and video games are what I spent like half of my childhood doing. So like, this is really what I'd love to keep doing. and talk
Never mind
about
my childhood, buddy. I'm spending most of my adulthood doing it. My
Hey.
seniorhood will certainly be spent doing a lot of that. So.
Hey, I mean, I can think of worse ways to spend a career.
I know. So just a couple, to go back to a couple of tracks we haven't necessarily spoke about in detail. So All for One, again, super fast. If I had hair, I would be headbanging.
Oh yeah, I mean, like pretty much every song on this record. Try to listen to this without headbanging or having the horns up, and it's just not possible. You will, whether you want to or not.
It was not in a bad way, catchy. And there's a lot of catchy stuff in here. Well, that's not necessarily a bad word in a musical world. Well, a lot of people are trying to make stuff that's deliberately not like that. Doom laden, edgy, weird time signatures, over loud, over screechy.
And some of that's cool. Like I like a lot of. I like some of that stuff every now and again. Like Ghost, I really enjoy. I'll probably be doing that as my next album review. Their new record, I really enjoy their sound because it harkens back to this older 70s and 80s sound, and kind of brings that melody back into the metal scene.
Yeah, and I've got a pop sensibility, as anyone who's seen my record collection would know, as well as a rock. So I kind of like catchy stuff, I mean, I love absolutely loud, killer, heavy rock. Put my head. That's why I'm half deaf. I used to stand with my head in the bass bins at club gigs.
Oh, I'm even worse because before I did that, I was a machine gunner. So yeah, my ears are toast.
Well, I was an Air Force avionics engineer, so
you're toast.
Standing, yeah. But the hearing it's remarkably good considering everything. But I do like catchy stuff, and even a track like All for One, it's catchy as hell. Yeah, it's fast, it's powerful, very catchy. And Living on the Limit, which is the last track in the
stuff like this is what I love to hear.
Yeah, Dino's a great guy.
And I'm glad that we're having a positive influence on these guys, on your music habits, because that's why we do this, is so that you guys can find out about new stuff that you'll enjoy too.
And I've learned stuff through guys like you and Nick as well. It's all.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've learned a ton. Like especially that Who episode. Like I learned a ton about the early history.
Mate. And I really enjoyed your contribution to that. That was a great show we did there.
And I love how we spent 3 hours on that stream and we barely made it out of Quadrophenia.
Barely scratched the surface. And it was all positive, good stuff. And I'm very proud of what we did in that show. And I think we'll do a few more like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'd love to do more like that. And I'd like to do more stuff like that on this channel as well. Either retrospectives on bands or on an album in particular that really influenced the genre. Like if we are gonna cover early Venom and some of Motorhead's early stuff at some point on this channel.
I love Venom, yeah.
And the absolute musical watersheds both of those guys were. I mean, without Venom, you don't have any of the thrash metal bands. You don't have death metal. Black metal didn't start. That's.
If we're going to talk about Motorhead, we also have to talk about Hawkwind first, though.
Yes, I do. I do need to get more versed with Hawkwind because I've listened to some of their stuff, but I haven't really dug deep into it yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's again like any older band that's been going a long time. They have their ups and downs, but some of their top material is killer.
Oh yeah,
and it's great to hear Lemmy's voice on those early 70s Hawkwind albums before he was Lemmy.
Yeah.
It's just I love it. I mean, I know we're diverting from Saxon here, but I love this whole story about how he was thrown out of Hawkwind or sacked from Hawkwind because he took the wrong type of drugs, not because he took drugs.
Yeah.
He loved speed, and they were all into LSD. So eventually he got caught at the Canadian border or something with some speed on him, and went into jail for the night. And they sacked him from the band for taking the wrong type of drugs.
Yet another thing Canada ruined.
That's right. So Canada's to blame for Hawkwind sacking Lemmy.
It's true.
But
you guys made up for it with Rush, though. So.
Oh, Rush! I love Rush. I mean, I love absolutely. This is where I like. That's where my complex side comes in. Where I love stuff that Rush do. Complex, but still heavy.
And really, not. It's hard to describe bands like Rush, is that they're complicated and you can tell they're super talented, but it's still good music to listen to.
Oh yeah, and they still have a punch, you know.
Oh yeah.
Actually, before we got cut off of my radio show last night, I was just about to get round to playing Working Man,
Nice.
a live Working Man from 1978, and because that's their heavy metal side before they became really proggy.
Yeah,
but
and then like I shared Xanadu with Dragon Master on that because I just saw them do that in that I saw Primus do that album last year, and that whole album is fantastic.
It is. I would have played Xanadu on the radio thing, but it's 10 minutes long, and your chances of getting away without getting the copyright thing then are...
Yeah, playing 2112 or Xanadu, and it's entirely, you're not going to get through it before something figures it out.
Besides, Geddy Lee's vocal would probably burst my headphones. It's so high-pitched.
Well, I mean, I've been using these for a minute, and I listen to Priest all the time, and Halford hasn't done that yet, so I think I'm safe. At least for now.
But this album's definitely this Saxon album's definitely in my wheelhouse. So I guess
this is my contender, or probably my top contender right now for album of the year. I know we're early in the year, but even looking at the schedule of what's coming out, I don't see anything that's going to top this.
And that's great because again, we go back to what we said at the beginning. These are not young guys, and this is a band that's been around for 55 years. And it's their 23rd album. To be able to produce something that good at this stage is something special, and as we said, a lot of older bands can't do that. When was the last time anybody gave a shit about a Rolling Stones album, for instance? You know.
Yeah, I mean, Sympathy for the Devil.
For me, practically the last good album they made. I know we're diverting here is. Tattoo You, probably, which is like 1982 or something.
Yeah.
Last good complete album. They've had a couple of good tracks and things, but this is bad. And I'm not, I love the Stones. I mean, I grew up with the Stones, but these are bands that are touring on past glories, so to speak. And I know they're a little bit older, not that much older than guys like Saxon, but to be able to stay that fresh and do new material that's still good, and if not better, it's magic. I don't know how you capture that, but it's pure magic.
Yeah, it is.
Very underrated band for that. Then you would look at the rock world and say, why are not more people talking about Saxon?
I mean, that's the thing. In the metal scene, these guys are huge. Like they're one of the titans of the NWO BHM movement.
Yes.
And like they're not an underground band at all, but for the mainstream rock fans, when they unless they're your age or something like that. A lot of the younger guys have never heard of Saxon, or they've heard of like one of their two of their older songs, and just kind of.
And I know.
Like, I've heard of them. Like I was with that. I was that way with Priest until like 6 years ago. I knew their hits, and I knew a couple of other stuff from them. And I'd never really looked into it, and then I heard "Screaming for Vengeance" in its entirety for the first time. I'm like, holy shit! I need to listen to these guys. And within a week, I owned half of their records, and now I own them all. So then they're my favorite band, full stop.
Still one of my favorite albums.
I mean,
but, so I know. I mean, I'm not knocking normies. I shouldn't be using that term, I guess. There are people I know, and maybe my age or younger, who are into rock and would go and see. They go, "Oh, I'm going to go see Iron Maiden." If you say, well, would you go and see Saxon? They'd go, who?
Yeah.
I'm not knocking Maiden again, but I just think that's not a fair representation of the quality of Saxon's work, and particularly modern work. So.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in the last 2 decades, really. I would put most of Saxon's releases up against anything Maiden's done.
Yep.
Ever, really. And not just in the last 10, 15 years. Maiden, like, don't get me wrong, their early stuff, and when they hit a song right, god damn, are they some of the best songs I've ever heard in my life. But consistently, I think Saxon and Priest are far better.
I think so. I mean, I look back to the 80s and the 90s with the rise of hair metal bands, and particularly, and Saxon, I think I saw an article about them that said at that point, they kind of realized they were never going to live in a Beverly Hills mansion. They had to get back to doing what they did best and concentrate on that audience that they had. And that's what they've been doing, I think. I think they've accepted they're never going to be They were never going to be Motley Crue, and thank God they're not.
Yeah.
But so we'll just get on with what we're good at. They're from Yorkshire, and they're going to be a Yorkshire band, and they're going to, albeit they may live in other places, but that's their core audience, and it's a large audience, but they're never going to be Iron Maiden in the public's view. It's a shame. That's the way it is.
You now have probably working on generation 3 of metalheads that are into these bands because they're still releasing new content and it's still fantastic. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Maiden was the band that got me into heavy metal as a genre, really.
Yeah.
And
I loved them at the time.
Unfortunately, the album I got into them on was Brave New World in 2000. So all the newer stuff that came out, I'm like, I don't really like it all that much.
Can I let you into a secret? I saw Maiden with Paul Di'Anio as the singer. And you know who was supporting them? Samson with Bruce Dickinson and vocals.
Holy shit.
That was a hell of a bill.
Yeah, I mean,
things switched after that.
I think Samson wasn't a bad band either. I've seen live stuff from them.
Oh yeah, he was known as Bruce at the time, of course.
Yep.
But I saw those Samson supporting Maiden in like 1980 or something.
That would have been their first. That would have been their first record too, because Maiden started in 1980.
Yeah.
Well, they started touring in 1980, really.
Yeah, so pretty early on.
But Di'Anno, people sleep on Paul Di'Anno, and yet a number of
3
their
albums he made.
And yet, was it 3 or 2?
He made 3 albums, I think.
I know Iron Maiden and Killers are his.
I thought he made 3.
Number of the Beast is Bruce Dickinson.
I thought there was.
I'll have to look that up. There might be a third.
I thought there was a third album in there somewhere, but
I may have to look that up.
I'm an old man, so what do I know?
I think. I mean, and I think that's. I think number of the Beast is number 3.
I'm happy to be corrected.
I think number of the Beast is number 3, but I'll have to look that up later. But anyway, like the Paul Di'Anno is a wicked underrated singer. And
he was. I really liked him.
When you look at it, you have immortal classics like Wrathchild and freaking Iron Maiden on here. On here,
you're right.
Killers
Number of the Beast was the third one. I don't know why I thought there was maybe he was in the process of recording it, because I know that Samson were in the same studio. And that for some reason, Dickinson ended up over in the other studio with them, and things changed. So maybe he was starting to record.
It's possible
with them. Yeah, I must have just picked that up wrong.
But I mean, these guys, just the consistency of their output, and even through the era when no one was listening to metal, even a lot of their '90s stuff and their early 2000s output. It's not some of my favorite stuff from them, but that's considering the high quality of their modern stuff and their original stuff, and that it's still good.
Oh yeah, I've never let the side down. I don't think.
And just like Priest and Motorhead, even a bad from our perspective, a bad Motorhead or Priest record or Saxon is better than most bands ever get.
Yeah, and there's always going to be several tracks that are equal of anything else on them. Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff, if you're a long-lived band like Saxon, you're going to have dips here and there because personnel and business issues and all sorts of other things kick in, and you're not going to get to do your best work even if you want to. But I think because they've had that stable lineup that Nick mentioned for a long time now, and they know what they want to do and how they want to do it, that enables them to keep the high quality up. But I was blown away by this album.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've listened to Thunderbolt and some of their other newer stuff, and I loved it. I loved it to death. I thought They Played Rock and Roll was a fantastic tribute to Lemmy and Motorhead, and I love the fact that they were singing from personal experience because they were the opener on that tour. So they witnessed it all firsthand.
They were there. They were there. That was a waxing nostalgic again, the AJM, but it was a special era. That era from 77 to about 82 was because you still had the older bands, but then you had the new wave of British heavy metal. You had some new wave bands that I loved, punk bands.
And then you have that personal experience of not only were they around for that tour, they were on that tour.
Mm-hmm.
So they know the stories we want to know.
Yeah. How are they all still alive? I don't know.
That's a question you could ask most of them.
But I mean, look at Biff. He's His vocals are
especially given
shape.
the life these guys led. I mean, they're not exactly the paragons of virtue and clean living here.
Yeah.
And he still sounds fantastic.
He does. The voice is usually the first thing to go in metal bands, because of the sheer power and volume that most of those guys sing with. But he's got that very clear tone as well, of course.
And you have guys like who are 20 years younger than him easily that are already losing their pipes. Like I saw Disturbed live in 2019, and unfortunately Dave's voice is starting to go.
Yeah, that's the toughest thing to keep up. I think, guitar players can usually get through.
Even if you're not as fast as you used to be, through old age and trickery, you can kind of make it work.
Yeah, but to belt that stuff out, like those guys and like Roger Daltrey of The Who, you can hear when they start to go a little, because they struggle to reach that high note, or they stop that bellow.
Especially somebody like Roger Daltrey or Rob Halford, where they have that real powerful scream that they can do, like the scream at the beginning of Dissonant Aggressor, or We Won't Get Fooled Again. It's just
that rips the throat.
If it's not there and it doesn't sound right live, it's just going to be a huge letdown.
And I think the thing that Halford and Biff have got is they do have a range. And they have a sort of a tenor baritone thing that they can switch between, so they can vary it a little. They don't have to scream everything out. And they've got a wider vocal range, which there's a tone to Biff's voice, which I like. You know?
Yeah, and he keeps it very consistent as well.
And he lets the dogs out when he has to.
And like he has the ability to really just draw you into that song. He has like his vocal tone is just perfect for this band, where it's just like, oh wow, okay. These like, because you hear the musicianship and you think you know what you're about to hear, and then that voice comes through and you're like, woo, okay. Yes, especially if you haven't listened to Saxon before.
I'm totally impressed by how he's maintained that voice on this album, and on the covers one, which he did in the lockdown, which I've been listening to as well, and he's solo. And I mean, if you see him doing Scarborough Fair, the video of him sings, it's brilliant, and it's beautiful. And then he goes into the much louder rock stuff at the end, and that shows you voice. And that
just shows you how purely talented he is as a singer, is that he can do that too. Because a lot of guys, like, this is all they can do.
Yeah. I guess the difference for him is that he's also a good musician in his own right. I mean, he doesn't tend to. I mean, he played bass for a while and whatever, but he's a great musician. He just doesn't tend to do it on the albums or live as much, because he's got other guys in the band. But he is as a result, he's a great producer and arranger. So he's really one of these undersung talents in the entirety of rock, if you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, because in addition to all of his onstage presence and stuff like that, in the writing room and in the production booth, he can do a lot on the back end as well to really make sure that. And you know what? That might be a key to these guys' success, is the fact that they've had that consistent presence, because producers change all the time.
Yes, they do.
But I mean, Biff's been in the band since they formed, and
that's right.
He's been there right along.
1977. It's a long time ago. Hell, yeah. I was still at high school.
I wouldn't be born yet for another decade.
I was still at high school. Jeez.
But
halfway through high school.
But, you know, you have that consistent presence in the band and in the production booth to just let everybody, or to kind of keep that sound steady throughout the years, and also learn what they did wrong, because no album's ever perfect, especially to the people that wrote it. Because I know, even as a musician myself, even if I'm happy with the end result of it, I know it's not perfect, and I'm still pissed off about at least one or two things I did on it. And hopefully I'll actually get a recording set up at some point so I can actually play some stuff and maybe do some some like guitar covers and stuff with the albums I'm reviewing, so that way I won't get copyright struck, because fuck you, YouTube, it's mine.
That's right. That's a good way of doing it, mate. You can still get struck for, sometimes it's bizarre that they still strike people for doing that, because they strike them from a publishing perspective, not a performance perspective, because it's two separate things. And there are people who've done cover stuff and they still get a strike, because the copyright owner of the publishing says, well, we own that song and we never gave you permission to cover it.
Right.
Which
even
is
though it's a
just
complete,
like...
even though it's so you have to like do that song, but do it in a newer way and do it in a different tuning and all sorts of other
I'd love
shit.
to hear you do some of that, mate. Yeah. And,
No, I mean, I'd love to actually like, even just come on stream for a while and just hang out and play. And
I can get
like
my
that.
guitar and strum. Just give me the chords. You can do the fancy stuff.
I mean, I wish I could do the fancy stuff.
I can strum.
Yeah, I have an idea for a band I've wanted to get off the ground for a decade now, but I'd have to have the time first of all, and I'd also have to have the talent to actually play a lot of the stuff I have in my head. Like I know what I want it to sound like, but I can't make it sound like that because I suck.
I'm sure you're not that bad, mate. You're being very modest, but
yeah, probably. But
so I probably will have to wrap up in a few minutes, my friend. I'm sorry. I wanted to get. I know it's your show, but I'm going to act as host for a second. So, what's your final sort of wrap up impressions of the album? What are your high spots? I've got a few of mine, but
I mean, as far as high points go, I think you have to do a lot to beat the first 3 tracks on this record. Carpe Diem, Age of Steam, and The Pilgrimage, because you have 3 different sounds all executed to absolute perfection. And that's your intro to this record. So that just puts you in the right headspace for the rest of this whole album. So I think and it's hard to pick a low point because there's only 1 or 2. Yeah. If I had to, I'd say maybe All for One or Black is the Night, where they're still great songs, but they don't stand out on this record.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the front half of the album is slightly stronger. Side 1, if you want to call it that, in the old days. Not that I don't love those songs at the back end, Supernova particularly. Well, that could have sneaked onto side. It could have just gone on side 1, depends on how they split them. But yeah, the first 3 tracks are killer. I do love Dam Busters as well. I'd say the first 4 are, for me, they would be permanent fixtures if I was playing them live. I was in the band and I wanted to play them live. Yeah, those 4. Dam Busters I love, partly because of the lyrical content, but it's just a great old turns up to 11 track. But the first 3,
absolutely. Especially following The Pilgrimage, where you have that kind of slower melodic track to kind of like throw you off pace a little bit, and then it's just foot to the floor again.
Yes, exactly. It's like, let's just pedal faster and get that. But the first 3, yeah, you're right. These are all classics. I think if they'd been made in 1981. People would still be singing their praises today.
These would be, I mean, this album would probably be on people's top 20 at least all time metal album charts.
I agree. And I think if you were to hear those 3 live, which I hope we get the chance to do soon, if their North American tour plans go ahead.
Oh, I'll be paying real close attention to that one.
Yeah, me too. I would love to hear those 3 live, the first 4 particularly. But particularly, I think The Pilgrimage. I
think it would be fantastic to see that live, especially in a big crowd.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of bands that would try to do a track like The Pilgrimage, and it would sound contrived. And we're just giving this a go. We're doing a moody ballad about meaningful things. It sounds magnificent. Saxon doing this. The bass playing, for instance, like that thunderous bass in the middle it's beautiful. So it's very musical.
And I love how there's a couple tracks on this record where they just let the bass play and there's nothing else except the drums. They're perfectly happy with it. It's not a bass solo either. He's just kind of there.
It's setting an atmosphere. It creates an atmosphere, I think, is what it is. Very moody atmosphere.
And then overall, I would give this album probably, like Nick said, a 9.3. That's what I have written down in my notes. It's about a 9.3. And I see that going up with future listens.
Yeah, I think I'd be, having listened to it for about 4 weeks now, excuse me, I think I'm prepared to go even a little further and say 9.5.
I could see an argument for that. And I'll probably get there eventually because every time I spin this record, I find something new I like.
Yeah, me too. And listening to it as well a lot on the headphones makes a big difference. You're able to hear those little bits and pieces that are in there, the musicality.
So just a little stuff you never notice otherwise.
Yeah, and I could see me playing this album now for a long time to come.
Oh yeah, this is going to be a standard rotation song for me, or an album for me for quite a while, and probably half of this is going to go on my Saxon playlist of just all time Saxon stuff. In fact, actually, I might not, because I have the habit of I'll have an artist playlist, but if I like the whole record, I'll just put the record on and listen to the whole thing.
That's an interesting point, and it's a discussion we could have in future at length about the fact everything's digital now is the destruction of the album in many cases.
We'll definitely have a conversation on that, because I have a lot of really strong opinions on that.
Yeah, and I'm as guilty of that as many people.
Oh, absolutely, I am
too. But more recently, I think since the lockdowns, and I'd lost my job at the start of all that, and I had time to sit around and listen to stuff. I started listening to the whole album again instead of playlists. And
absolutely.
And this is an album I wouldn't want to just dip into. It's one of those ones I'd want to hear the whole thing again and again. So that's an interesting discussion.
So and this is one of those albums I can say without question, this is a must own if you're a Saxon fan, and even if you're just a heavy metal fan in general, this belongs in your record collection. So like 100%.
I think so. Yeah, I'd concur. I'd say I would find it very difficult for someone who's into metal or hard rock not to love this album.
And it seems to me very much the album you could give to somebody who isn't a fan yet. And I sincerely hope some of those people see this streaming, and just that's why I put the album in the description of the video always, and you can just go here.
Yeah, and I think you could give it to people that are not necessarily into metal, or might be just more into general stuff, and they would get something out of it.
Oh yeah, I think they would get a lot out of it. In the same way, I've noticed Sabaton's been that band recently for a lot of people that got them into the scene. Yes. And they were one of the first ones I started paying attention to when I started getting back into it. And I could easily see this record being a lot of people's gateway into the genre as a whole. And I could not be happier about that, because I think it means we're about to have a lot of fellow metalheads sitting here banging their heads with us.
Yeah, that'll be good. I can't bang my head too hard. I've lost enough brain cells as it is.
Yeah, I need everyone I've got.
Sorry, yeah, I don't want the remaining ones to get lonely. It's been great, mate. Thank you for having me on this. We'll definitely be doing more stuff.
Oh no, absolutely, man. And like I said, we'll both try to figure out that streaming thing with Odyssey or BitChute, and see if we can't start doing stuff over there too.
Well, indeed. I mean, I love my radio shows, but they keep getting interrupted at the worst times by YouTube. So,
oh, absolutely.
All that great stuff I was going to play last night I never got to. However, part 2 will contain that stuff.
Which, if you're not subbed to that 70s Rock Fan Radio, I'll put a link to that channel in the description. Definitely sub if you like this kind of stuff, because it's right up your alley.
Yeah, I'll just, if you don't mind indulging me, so I've got just going to share.
No, absolutely, screen. Man. Hang on. I will.
If you're able to add it.
There we go.
Oh, I was trying to share my.
Oh, okay.
But hey, I love to see myself.
Yeah, I don't know if I can share. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so that's my main channel. And there's a lot of people with 70s Rock Fan in their names on YouTube, I noticed, which I didn't realize. So with that 70s Rock Fan, where you'll
all imitators.
You'll find my all my content, science fiction stuff about bands, stuff about vinyl, movie stuff, classic rock stuff. It's all on there. But I also have my radio channel, that 70s Rock Fan Radio, and last night's is still up. I haven't had to trim any footage out of last night's broadcast. Normally I got to cut a couple of block things out, but last night's show is still up.
Which is funny because they took it down on us.
Yeah, but they haven't cut that. So yeah, if anyone feels like subscribing to that, and I would recommend clicking the bell for notifications so you'll know when I'm going live, because it's not a regular thing. I just do it as I feel like it. And we had a lot of fun last night and in the chat. So
as the man himself says, it's nae bad.
That 70s Rock Fan Radio, it's nae bad. It's not shite.
Unlike this channel.
Yeah. Oh God, no, man, this is great. You're doing some good stuff. So it's only going to get even bigger and better. You're doing a great job.
Absolutely,
Keep it up,
man. Hopefully.
Keep it up.
But thank you so much for joining me, man. And
my pleasure.
Thank you, chat, for being here. And I hope you guys listen to this record tonight or whenever. And I hope you guys really love it, because this is something that everybody I've talked to about this record is absolutely blown away by it. And I think you guys are going to adore it. So with that being said, you guys know who I am. I'm Pope Metallicus the First. I run a music channel over here. I'm probably going to start moving my gaming stuff over to Twitch, because I think that's a little bit better platform for it. So I'll probably have more updates on that. I have a Gilded server that I'll be linking in the comments if you guys want to come hang out there. It's a really cool platform. It's basically Discord, but better. And you'll see a lot of familiar faces like this guy on there. And
you lucky people.
Yeah, absolutely. You get to hang out with us more. I mean, if you're a masochist. But no, absolutely. I would love to have you guys over there. And I put up all the streams and stuff I do. I will put up on my page before I do them, so you guys know ahead of time. And with that,
thanks to the chat, everybody.
Absolutely.
Zeno, Amber, Dragon Master, anyone else. Thank you all.
Absolutely. All of you guys that stopped by. As always, stay healthy, stay safe. I love you all. And I'll catch you guys next time.